Hey friend, if you're experiencing anxiety, stress, or fear around the tinnitus that you're hearing, I wanted to make this video for you to let you know that there's hope, not only in reducing how loud you perceive your tinnitus to be, but also in reducing how much it's impacting your day-to-day life. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 ways to break out of the cycle of anxiety, stress, and fear so that you can start to see a clear path towards a happy and healthy future. Often when we're experiencing a problem with our health that's new or that's gotten significantly worse, simply having a deeper understanding of what's actually going on can really help to diffuse the emotional reaction and the stress and anxiety and fear response that we might be experiencing. So let's talk a little bit about what tinnitus actually is. Of course, if you're experiencing tinnitus, you know that you're hearing a sound in your head, but there's no external source for that sound. What's happening is there are neurons in the auditory part of your brain that are misfiring. You have nerve signals that are causing your brain to perceive a sound that's there even though there's no external source for that sound. Tinnitus can be due to a variety of conditions, many of which are medically benign. While there's no cure for tinnitus, it is a treatable condition, and we can see reductions in the volume of tinnitus as well as its impact on your life over time. To help you understand why tinnitus can become bothersome, I want to introduce you to a concept called sensory gating. Our brain uses sensory gating to ignore stimuli that are unimportant. For example, you don't normally notice the sensation of your tongue in your mouth, but if you start to become aware of that sensation, it becomes very noticeable. If you think about it, if we were constantly experiencing all the sensations that we feel all the time, it would be incredibly overwhelming. The brain has to pick and choose which sensations are important and pay attention to those, and which sensations are unimportant and ignore those. With bothersome tinnitus, our brain may perceive that sensation as a threat, and it won't gate that sensation out because it sees it as a danger. With tinnitus, when it's bothersome, our brain doesn't gate that sensation out, which causes us to have a heightened awareness of the sensation of sound in our head. The goal of tinnitus management is to help the brain recategorize tinnitus as an unimportant sensation so that we can begin to ignore it. For me, when I was in college, I started to experience floaters in my eyes, which are little black squiggly lines in my eyes, and I could see them as I was walking around, and it kind of freaked me out because I didn't know what was going on. And so I was always hyper aware of these floaters in my eyes. When I went and saw my optometrist, he let me know that that was a benign condition, typically nothing wrong with it, and it's just something that I needed to get used to. And over time, because I wasn't worried about it, because I had that reassurance from my doctor that there was nothing actually medically wrong with me, my brain just began to ignore the floaters. The interesting thing is if I think about the floaters and if I try to look for them, I can still see them. They're still there all the time, but my brain gates that information out, so I'm rarely ever aware of it. So once we understand that tinnitus in most cases is a benign condition, it's just a sensation that we're feeling. Sound is a sensation. We hear sounds all the time and they typically don't bother us, right? If I think about it, I can hear the sound of my own breath. I never listen to the sound of my own breath. So what we need to do is recategorize tinnitus as just another sound that our brain can ignore, and with the understanding that it's benign and that there's nothing wrong, we can begin to reduce how much we pay attention to it. The second step to reducing the impact of tinnitus in our lives is to get the necessary medical testing. If you've been experiencing tinnitus for at least a couple of weeks and there wasn't any known cause for the tinnitus, it's not a bad idea to talk to your primary care physician so that they can rule out potential conditions like earwax in the ear or TMJ, conditions that could be treated and could resolve the tinnitus medically. The next step is to have your hearing evaluated by an audiologist or an ear, nose, and throat physician so that they can rule out any medical red flags and identify anything that might be going on, and ultimately just to get you a diagnosis. I know for many patients that I've worked with who experience tinnitus, when we're experiencing anxiety around our tinnitus, if we can get a clear diagnosis and understand what's actually causing the tinnitus, or even if we don't know the cause, if we know that there's nothing medically underlying the tinnitus, it can create some psychological relief and just reduce and calm down that fight or flight response. All right, step 3 in managing the anxiety with your tinnitus is to avoid catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is a psychological state where we believe that the most extreme versions of our thoughts must be true. When we believe that the most extreme versions of our thoughts about our tinnitus must be true, that activates the fight or flight response in reaction to our tinnitus and can actually increase our perception of the sound. This can become a cycle where you experience anxiety that triggers your brain to believe something is wrong and you need to be alert to danger, which in turn increases your attention to the tinnitus. We can begin to become aware of catastrophizing and reprogram our brain to learn that these thoughts aren't necessarily true. With mindfulness and some other exercises, we can begin to recognize anxiety thoughts and learn to recognize the voice of anxiety, which tends to use kind of extreme declarative terms. With tinnitus, this might manifest in thoughts that say, tinnitus is going to ruin my life. This is never going to go away. My life is ruined because of tinnitus. Now, Now, I don't want to introduce any trauma to you here by talking about these thoughts, but it's really important to become aware of the thoughts so that you can manage them instead of being controlled by them. So one thing you can do is actually write down your most common tinnitus anxiety thoughts so that you can begin to recognize them for what they are when they come up. Now, when you begin experiencing these thoughts, which you've probably been experiencing subconsciously up to this point, as you become more aware of them, you can just note them and let them pass. Remember, these are fears, not facts. All right, on to step number 4, stop Googling. Sometimes when we experience tinnitus, we want to feel like we have control over it. One of the ways that we feel like we can gain control is by getting reassurance or confirmation by Googling. Your subconscious might be saying, I'm going to spend hours of my time scouring the internet to confirm that my fears are true. This pours gas on the anxiety fire. Yes, tinnitus could be a symptom of a lot of problems, but more often than not, it's just tinnitus. Plus, if you've already gone through testing to rule out a serious medical condition, continuing to research can be unproductive and unhelpful. This ultimately drains your brain and feeds your anxiety, and it just reinforces that need for constant reassurance. What you can do is just check in with yourself. Has constantly seeking more medical information or more reassurance made you feel better or worse? Instead of consulting the internet, like I said, consult a doctor once for a diagnosis. Then it's time to redirect your energy towards a healthy life and activities that you actually value. The point here is we need to stop focusing on a perceived danger, because what you focus on, you tend to get more of. All right, and finally, step 5 is managing your stress and anxiety. If you're experiencing anxiety with your tinnitus, it's important to understand that anxiety is just your brain trying to keep you safe. Trying to fight anxiety or make it go away is ultimately a losing battle. The more that you focus on being in a state that you don't want to be in, unfortunately, you're just going to make yourself feel worse. Again, what we focus on, we tend to get more of. Instead, I find it helpful to think of your anxiety as a separate entity from yourself. The purpose of that entity is to keep you safe, so you can tell it, thank you for trying to keep me safe. This reminds us that we are not our anxiety. Our anxiety is just thoughts and feelings that are happening in our brain. So instead of fixating and ruminating and trying to fix things that we don't have control over, taking positive action with stress management activities like listening to music, going for a walk, taking a warm bath, drinking a cup of tea, mindfulness meditation, and exercise are all healthy ways to manage our stress response to our tinnitus. Specifically with tinnitus, having sound in your environment that mixes with your tinnitus not only reduces your perception of the loudness of the tinnitus, it also begins to retrain that normal gating response in your brain so that your brain can begin to ignore the tinnitus. In addition to those stress reduction activities, healthy behaviors like eating nutritious food, getting enough sleep, avoiding alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, and sodium, and drinking plenty of water keep our body healthy and can all positively impact tinnitus. Living with bothersome tinnitus can feel overwhelming, but it's incredibly helpful to take these active steps to begin reducing your fight or flight reflex and reduce your brain's reactivity to the tinnitus. Remember, this is a condition that can improve over time, and all the actions that you need to take to manage your tinnitus are also going to end up leading to a healthier and happier life. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video.